Good evening, everyone. I'm Anna Abraham, and on behalf of the Harmony Foundation, I'm delighted to welcome you all to the Harmony International webinar. While this is the digital version of the prominent annual Harmony International Conference, our aim remains the same: to engage the youth of the world with the persisting issues of society and to establish a critical dialogue around it. Each year, the conference revolves around a pertinent social issue, and this year is no different. This year, our theme is addressing climate change and the importance of environmental sustainability. In today's webinar, our panel of eminent speakers will not only shed light on grave environmental causes that they champion, but will also help you understand the ways in which you can make a difference. I hope that this webinar ignites a fire in your soul and that you will join hands with us and pledge to heal our planet. Before I invite our perceptive speakers to take over, I would like to invite Harmony Foundation's president and founder, Dr. Abraham Ahay, to share a few words.
Thank you, Anna. Good evening, everyone. I'm immensely happy to have you all present for the annual Harmony International webinar, as the focus of this webinar is on addressing climate change and the importance of environmental sustainability, and to stir up the conscience of the society at large about this grave issue plaguing the world today. I'm thankful to an eminent panel of speakers who are the torchbearers in the fight against the degradation of the environment. I would also like to thank the students who are attending this webinar. I'm hopeful that through this knowledgeable meet, you will not only garner an understanding of the environmental issues, but also pledge to take urgent actions to eradicate these challenges. I thank you all once again for joining Harmony Foundation's webinar this year.
Thank you, Dr. Mathai. Moving ahead, on behalf of the Harmony Foundation, I am immensely honored to invite our first speaker for the day, Ms. Dianna Cohen. Ms. Cohen is not only a visual artist and activist, but also co-founder and CEO of Plastic Pollution Coalition, using both her platform and her creative mind to advocate against plastic pollution.
Hi, I'm Dianna Cohen. I'm a visual artist and I'm CEO and co-founder of Plastic Pollution Coalition. Plastic Pollution Coalition was co-founded back in 2009 in response to what we were learning about plastic getting mainly into the ocean, but into the ocean and into our environment. When we originally came together to create the coalition, we were looking at the landscape of what was happening around us. And I was really responding on a personal front as a visual artist who had been making work. I've been making artwork now for almost 30 years out of plastic bags that I cut up and sew back together. I make 2- and 3-dimensional pieces, and I make installations and sculptural pieces and show those in galleries and foundations and museums. But about 12 years ago, when we co-founded Plastic Pollution Coalition, or just prior to that, I had for a couple of years been hearing about how a lot of plastic was getting out into the Pacific Ocean, and I'd been hearing about this thing called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. And over the course of my life, I was also noticing more and more plastic at the beach, here in Southern California, where I live in the United States, but also when I would have the opportunity to travel, I was seeing plastic in the Mediterranean. I was seeing plastic on the East Coast, the eastern coast of the United States, and just seeing it in my travels, seeing it in Hawaii. And my first response to seeing a lot of plastic out in the world and in the environment, but particularly in the ocean at the beach, was, we've got to clean this up. And so it was to pick it up, to bring it with me, to take it out, to look for a garbage can, to put it there, and then think, okay, now I've taken care of the problem. That was initially over the last, 30 plus years. But when I started hearing about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch back in 2007, 2008, I realized that there was a bigger problem that was brewing, basically swirling in these gyre systems in the ocean. And so in doing that, my first response was that we need to go clean this up. And I spent about almost a year working on a plan to go out with a cargo ship and 2 decommissioned fishing trawlers, a cold molding machine, a crane, and a chipper that could take up to 50% organic matter. Because the more I learned about what was happening in the ocean, I came to understand that that the plastics and things that get into the ocean attract other organic matter to the surface of those. And so I realized that I might be trying to cut up things that had a lot of organic matter. So I was looking at all of that. I was putting together a proposal and a business plan. I thought, I live here in California. I would rally my friends who were professional surfers and athletes who were concerned about plastic in the ocean. Also rally friends who were actors, actresses, musicians, and people in the public eye who might be able to help me get the message out that there was a problem with plastic and plastic pollution getting into the ocean and into the environment. So that was my original idea. And then I realized that was a Sisyphusian task to try and clean up the ocean. The more I spoke to people who had expertise about what was actually happening in the gyre, what it looked like out in the ocean, and where it was spread out, I came to understand that I couldn't just travel to an island that we imagine that just is out there somewhere with things floating on top of the water, that the plastic, depending on the buoyancy and the different kinds of plastic, the different plastic makeup, would be in all the water strata. So all the way down to on the ocean floor. And we didn't know how much. It wasn't quantified in any way yet. We didn't know how much was being released into the oceans. And so I realized that I needed to take a break for a minute, back up, look at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture was that is around the time that I met the other co-founders, and we came up with this idea to create a coalition together. The whole chain of plastic. And when we're talking about plastic, what we're really also talking about is we're talking about the petrochemical industry. So when we look at the entire chain, what we realize is that in order for us to use single-use plastics and plastics the way that the world is currently using them, which is to package the majority of our food and beverages and beauty products and health products, that is not only not sustainable, but that the entire chain pollutes us. It pollutes human health, it pollutes animal health, it pollutes rivers, lakes, oceans, it pollutes our environment, and at the end of use, it pollutes our air. And when we look at the whole chain, we realize plastic pollutes from extraction of fossil fuels and fracking and cracking through production, manufacturing, use, particularly if it's designed for single use, and then immediately it's a waste management challenge or problem. And oftentimes the solution for that is, incineration. Think about it this way. I call it this moment in time, the wild, wild west. I think we have an incredible opportunity right now to change the course that we're on. And that means not only changing materials that we choose to work with or to eat from or drink from, but as we create new ideas, as we create businesses, as we work with existing businesses, to really look at and think about how we can shift the system to a non-toxic, biobenign, truly sustainable, regenerative system. I like to think about when I had the opportunity to spend time in Mumbai and then to travel to Pune, the open markets that I was able to go to. And we have farmers markets here in Southern California where I live. And I also go to those every week to buy food, or sometimes twice a week to buy fresh food, fruit and vegetables. And that allows you, when you shop in that way, it really allows you to have friendships and relationships with farmers and with the people who are growing and providing your food to you. Another thing I really loved, there were many things I loved in India, but I really loved a lot of the more traditional kind of thali plates that people use, the steel plates with the different components, the different sections to them, the lunch boxes. That's just such a beautiful model and something that I'm seeing in the United States, some businesses that have been created where they are, like Dispatch Goods is doing a reusable, refillable steel container with different restaurants in the Bay Area, in Northern California and San Francisco, and helping people. It is now launched, called the Understanding Packaging Scorecard. And the URL for that is upscorecard.org. That is a site that you can go to, sign into, and then use it if you're part of a business, small, medium, or large company, and look at and learn and compare different kinds of packaging that you can use for your food or beverages. So I'm very excited about that project, and we work on that we developed it with a number of different groups, and it's run by the SUMD, the Single-Use Materials Decelerator, and it included representatives from Sodexo and Aramark and Compass at Google and Subway and a number of big companies and Plastic Pollution Coalition and the Food Packaging Forum. We have a new project that we've just launched. We did a soft launch, but we'll be launching it more formally January 19th with a webinar, and it's called Flip the Script on Plastic. And it is a project where we're focused on working with Hollywood and Bollywood, so the entertainment industry, and looking at how, again, we talk about the truth about plastic and the impact of plastic and the chemicals in plastic and how it's impacting human health and animal health, etc., communities, both in the narrative, so in the storylines of television and film, but also behind the scenes and how we help provide tools that will help the production behind the scenes reduce their plastic footprint as well. So I'm very, very excited. Reporte where we could have a conversation, and I hope that we'll be able to do that in the future. I look forward to meeting many of you in the future and to learning about projects that you're working on. And I say to everyone, happy holidays, and I wish you a wonderful, healthy, and happy, joyful, plastic-free New Year 2022 as we work together towards a world free of plastic pollution.
Thank you, Ms. Cohen. Ladies and gentlemen, as mentioned earlier, the Harmony International Conference is aimed at engaging the young minds, for they truly are the future of this world. While we look up to and salute the Greta Thunbergs of the world, I am delighted to invite one of the youngest shining examples of India's youth environmentalists, Miss Vinisha Umashankar. She innovated the solar-powered ironing cart that led her to the finals of the Earthshot Prize, a prestigious environment prize by the Royal Foundation of the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, UK.
I'm Vinisha Umashankar, a grade 10 student studying in Tiruvannamala. I'm not only a student, but I'm also an innovator, public speaker, environmentalist, and entrepreneur. My interest in science started about the age of 5 years old when my parents gifted me a space encyclopedia for my 5th birthday. So this happened a long time ago, but that interest in science started when I was really young. And I'm really glad that it happened too, because now I'm an innovator working for a really good environmental cause. So my innovation is the solar ironing cart. But apart from innovating, I also have various hobbies, as a 15-year-old should. I'm interested in art, music, science, technology, sports, you name it. So you could probably call me the jack of all trades and master of some, because I'm really good in multiple different fields. Now I really like to put almost all of these interests to a really good use, which is why I ended up becoming an innovator, and I'm working towards saving our planet. As an innovator, I've come up with many innovations, but my most well-known innovation has to be the solar ironing cart. I came up with the idea of a solar ironing cart when I was 12 years old. I was walking past an ironing vendor on my street, and I realized that he was using charcoal, but he was burning it and not reusing it again. So it was just a waste after using it for one time. He was also coughing from the fumes, and at that moment I knew there was something wrong about charcoal-based ironing, but I couldn't really point my finger on it. So knowing this information, I came back home and I did research. And my research concluded with 4 major points. The first one being charcoal production itself is really harmful to the environment. So when you have to produce charcoal, you have to cut down trees on a really large scale. That results in deforestation. And if you do that, you have to burn the trees to actually produce the charcoal. So that causes air pollution too. And the charcoal formation itself takes place over weeks, and you have to burn it again while ironing. That causes even more air pollution and respiratory diseases to the ironing vendors. Finally, all of this contributes to climate change and deteriorates the health of millions of people across the world. Did you know that for each ironing cart across the country in India, 5 kg of charcoal gets burnt? And there are almost 10 million of these ironing carts across the country. That's 50 million kg of charcoal burnt every day just in India alone. Just imagine how much damage that does. Yes, that's a lot of damage, which is why I came up with the solar ironing cart. So the solar ironing cart works on solar energy, nothing else. It has solar panels on the top, which give power to the iron box directly, so no energy is wasted. If there is excess electricity, then it goes to a battery below the ironing cart and it's stored over there. So any excess electricity can be used later, like in monsoon months or during the night. This is how the solar ironing cart works, and the benefits is that it's mobile, it fulfills 13 out of the 15 Sustainable Development Goals, and it has a GSM PCO, USB charging points and mobile recharging service so that the ironing vendors can earn extra income. The solar ironing cart doesn't only benefit the ironing vendors, but it also benefits the world in various different sectors. The first one being the environment. Obviously, the solar ironing cart completely eliminates the usage of charcoal because it runs solely on solar power. So when charcoal is eliminated, there is no deforestation due to charcoal. So that enriches biodiversity in forest and jungle landscapes. This not only saves the trees, but it also saves the animals and the ecosystems and habitats within the forest, which is really important for countries like India, which are trying to increase their forest cover. Now, this is from an environment perspective, but from a societal perspective, it really helps the families of the ironing vendors too. Because with the solar ironing cart, you get solid income enough to educate the younger generation and support a family at the same time. So it can also increase the economy and the World Development Index of India alone. And then, from a business perspective, the solar ironing cart requires very low maintenance and it can come for almost 25 years with little to no maintenance at all. So it's a really worthy investment that almost any ironing vendor can afford and invest in. Now I have a message to all the younger generations across the whole world. Believe in yourself. If you have an idea, believe in your idea, because only you know how important that idea is to you. Nobody else will realize that. But just keep belief in that idea and work on it. Work on it until you feel that it's successful enough. And once you have that idea, bring it out to the world. Show your potential to them. And those who once criticized you for developing an idea will now congratulate you instead. So just focus on developing your own unique set of skills, and soon you will be another successful person in this planet. So just stay curious and believe in yourself.
Thank you, Vinisha. I'm pleased to invite our next speaker for the day, Miss Marie-Noelle Keijzer. Ms. Keijzer is one of the most passionate and visionary climate leaders of the world. She co-founded WeForest in 2009 and turned it into the world's leading sustainable reforestation movement.
Thank you for your introduction. The question we want to discuss today is, will we be able together to make the Earth cooler? You all know it is already quite hot. And in Paris, at COP21, we all agreed, all the countries around the world agreed to not exceed 1.5 degrees, right? Well, guess what? Global temperatures already are showing 1 degree increase. And these are only averages, so it is getting hot. And we also know what this means for everyone, especially the poorest on this planet. The past 5 years have been the hottest on record. Sea level is clearly rising, glaciers are melting, heat waves, fires, and the list goes on. COP after COP, it is really easy to lose hope. For example, you all heard about the Glasgow disappointing results, even if new pledges were once made. were once again made, actually. The pledges are not ambitious enough and often not met. The world is now unfortunately heading for 2.4 degree warming unless we react, and unless we react now. How does this vicious circle of global warming work? Well, actually, we spew greenhouse gases like never before in the atmosphere from burning fossil fuel. This increases the global temperatures because there's more carbon in the atmosphere. These higher temperatures also cause more water vapor, which is another greenhouse gas and a very potent one. So now we end up with carbon dioxide and with CO2 and with water vapor in the atmosphere. So a lot of greenhouse gases. And this feeds this vicious circle of global warming. So we got to stop that. The recent IPCC report, which is the group of climate experts that come together regularly to analyze the situation, they sent a very clear message. In August last year, they predicted worst case scenario. And no wonder why it was also called Code Red for Humanity. So we have to stop the carbon pollution. The CO2 concentration in our atmosphere is today at 415 ppm, 415 parts per million. That might not tell you much, but actually, remember this, we should never have exceeded 350 ppm, and we are at 415. We hit 350 ppm back in the 90s. And this excess CO2 created a burden of 300 gigatons of CO2 that we have to get rid of. And the bad news is all this extra heat that we have in our system is stored in the oceans. So even if today we stopped emissions, it would still take decades to cool. So we have to act now. We cannot wait any longer. And there are two things we need to do. We need to stop the carbon pollution, replacing our fossil consumption or fossil burning with alternative sources of energy. We have to do that now. There is no choice. And the second thing we need to do is remove this excess carbon from the atmosphere and find great carbon sinks. Well, actually, there is one that is sometimes overlooked. And it's an amazing source of, an amazing carbon sink. Those are forests. They are actually the natural climate regulator. So this is obviously great news. The bad news is that we are destroying this forest. We have a problem. Every year, we destroy the equivalent of twice the size of Denmark of forests around the world, for timber, for agriculture, for different reasons. And organizations like WeForest are able to only restore an area the size of Denmark. So we destroy 2 Denmarks and we restore 1 Denmark every year. So as you see, every year we're losing. And actually, we should not only stabilize the current forests, we need to grow them. And we even know by how much. We know that if we grow the current forest cover by 25%, which is obviously huge, this is like if we added the size of the United States of America in new forests to the existing forests we have today, we would be able to sequester 2/3 of this carbon pollution in our atmosphere. Isn't that amazing? So we have to do that. There is no choice. And to make this happen, we need the support of ambitious public policies. We need our government to help us protect these forests. They need to make deforestation illegal. We need long-term funding. So we need long-term corporate engagement so that we can start projects that will have a long-term impact and a very large scale. And we need real action on the ground, and that's the hard part. Actually, public policy is possible. Long-term corporate engagement is already happening, but real action on the ground at that scale is really complex, and that's what we have to focus on. It's possible, but it is not as simple as just planting a tree. Over the last 10 years, WeForest has demonstrated that it is possible, that it works. We were created, or I co-created WeForest with the biggest challenge of our time in mind. Our objective is to reverse climate change. And that problem cannot be looked at in isolation. You have to look at the root causes of the problem. How did deforestation happen? Why did we destroy our planet? What are alternatives for people who are cutting the trees today in order to thrive and have a good life? So we have to replace the deforestation by alternative sources of income. And when we look at the forest that we restore, we look at other activities around, like soil restoration. We also focus on protecting wildlife and bringing water back. So the projects that work are holistic and multi-purpose. It's not about just planting trees. And once we start doing that, obviously it will take time for the new trees to grow. If you plant new forests, it can take decades to really get large trees that will sequester all that excess carbon. However, when you plant trees in the tropics, where trees grow quickly, they produce clouds that reflect the sun's energy, which has a physical cooling impact. That is super important and not often known. We consider the science around the water cycle as important for climate as the science on carbon. In a few words, who is WeForest? Who are we? We are a Belgian international nonprofit, a team of 50 people scattered around the world, in Ethiopia, Zambia, in Brazil, in Europe as well. And we focus on overlooked forests in tropical zones and in developing countries. To date, we're proud to say that we have already planted and protected 50 million trees, which is 40,000 hectares. It's a square, 40,000 hectares is a square of 20 by 20 kilometers, just for you to visualize. We did that thanks to the support of 500 corporates, brands like Nike, Brabantia, amazing partners that have worked with us for years. And the great news is that we will be doubling what we did in the last 10 years, we will be doubling now in the next 4 years. However, this is a gigantic task and no one can do that alone. The problem is not the lack of funding. Reality is that we see great multi-million commitments. It was announced by 1T.org recently that over 25 companies are committed to conserving, restoring, and growing over 3.5 billion trees in over 55 countries. So this is not really the problem, but we need much more. It's not going to be enough. If you do the math, it's not enough. And as mentioned, these pledges need to be translated into action on the ground. That is what makes a difference, not the pledge. And there are simply not enough projects to invest in, or not enough strong ones meeting the required quality standards. And all of us are already growing and scaling to respond to this rising demand for action. However, even if each of us, each organization like WeForest was doubling in size, it would still not be enough. We need many others to scale up good forest landscape restoration. And this is really an open invitation to everyone who wants to act. And our humble wish at WeForest is that this year, the Mother Teresa Award inspires all organizations around the world that fight to protect and restore our planet, to continue their work and keep the faith in the face of our global failures, so that one day our children will say of us all, they did not know it was impossible, so they did it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Keijzer. I now invite our next youth for the day, Ms. Aadya Joshi. Aadya is a recipient of the Children's Climate Prize 2020. She's a young, dynamic girl who is the founder of the Right Green initiative.
My name is Adya Joshi. I'm a college student and the founder of The Right Green. The Right Green is an initiative that champions the cause of biodiversity restoration through research, education, and advocacy on native plants. One of the most important problems that we face today is biodiversity decline. When I was a child, my grandfather would tell me stories of all the birds and butterflies he would see growing up in Mumbai, but I never saw any of these. Biodiversity loss is one of the most difficult problems to comprehend due to the number of species that go extinct unnoticed. This is especially true with insect populations, where over 70% of our insects have already gone extinct. I found a solution to this problem by researching biodiversity loss. Dr. Douglas Dallamy in the US had found that native trees were crucial ecological links in supporting biodiversity. He found that by planting the right native trees, one could bring back insect populations and in turn the rest of biodiversity like birds and small animals. He had created a database of host plants for insects in the American subcontinent and used this to restore biodiversity in many American cities. I was inspired by this and thrilled by the fact that I could now bring our birds, butterflies, and biodiversity back to our neighborhoods. But this first required me to do tons of research and create a database of plant-insect feeding relationships for the Indian subcontinent. After this, I was faced with the challenge of putting our databases to use. How do you tell landscapers and gardeners on what are the right trees to plant? Going through a database of 15,000 entries was impractical, so I developed a biopower index to rank plants and help landscapers, gardeners, and civic authorities plant the best biodiversity supporting trees for their region. At a time when large-scale plantations are very popular, the Right Green database provides a ready reference of the right trees and plants that support our biodiversity in India. The next challenge was to bring this information to school children. The question then was, how does one deliver the science of the plant-insect-bird relationships and ecological restoration to a bunch of energetic kids in an outdoor environment? Combined with this was the challenge of ensuring that they learn and have an opportunity to translate their work into action. To overcome these challenges, I designed a scavenger hunt to be conducted in a local park. I would provide cards with clues hidden in verses of poetry and a picture of the leaf of the tree. The young detectives would use this to identify and assemble under the right tree. Once under the tree, I would initiate a discussion about the tree and the bugs that the kids could spot on the tree. Going through a few trees, the kids began to learn about the special relationship between native plants and insect herbivores. They also learned how native plants support a much larger biodiversity of insect species than foreign plants. And they learned that when you saw holes in the leaves, this meant insect feeding, and it was a sign of healthy ecosystems, not ones that were hurt. The workshops ended with a discussion using poster cards and later was supplemented with an animated video. I also designed a field guide which identified common native and non-native plants in the city. Kids took the book home along with a tree survey form for their neighborhood. This ensured that the message and the excitement traveled home with them, and kids became evangelists for native trees. When I started this project, I had no idea that it would have such an impact. Sometimes I doubted myself when faced with a challenge, but I was always surprised that people stepped forward to help me.
Thank you, Aadya. I'm pleased to invite our next speaker for the day, Ms. Branka Begic. Ms. Begic is the Program Officer Asia and the Deputy Head of International Cooperation Division at Missio Munich, a German-based global organization committed to preserving the diversity of life and treading sustainable paths.
So, Missio Munich, as an international Catholic aid organization that was founded over 180 years ago, is happy to see our commitment confirmed again and again. We would like to thank you on behalf of all staff and all donors who make our work possible at all. Our work supports projects implemented by the local Catholic Church in various fields like education, promoting peace, providing emergency aid, and preserving creation in Africa, Asia, and Oceania. Pope Francis issued a so-called encyclical letter that is an announcement in 2015 with the title Laudato Si, on care of our common home. The letter focuses on the topic of environment and climate protection and also sets standards with regard to existing social injustices and the exhaustion of natural resources. Missio Munich has been dealing with these topics for decades and not just recently, and is happy to support projects with the content preservation of creation. So my name is Branka Begic. I'm Program Officer Asia with a focus on India, as well as Deputy Head of International Cooperation Division for many years. I would like to show you our commitment through some projects, topics, and personal experiences. Because it is my area of expertise, I would like to start with samples from India. For the first example, I would like to refer back to the Pope's letter already mentioned, the opening words of which are taken from the Canticle of the Son of St. Francis of Assisi. It is a prayer written in the 13th centenary in which he praises the beauty of creation and thanks God for it. He is honored as a saint by Christians as well as by people of other denominations. Taking him as a model, a community of Franciscan brothers was founded in Nagpur at the beginning of the 20th centenary. Missio Munich has been in contact with the brothers for many, many years, and we wanted to accompany the brothers' idea of founding an eco-spirituality center in Northeast India from the beginning. Words become deeds. The St. Francis Eco-Spirituality Center is existing meanwhile in Orlonghada in the state of Meghalaya and is well received by many people. Among other things, it offers seminars and workshops, but also intended to show practical work on the various aspects of environmental protection. Part of the area is reserved for inner contemplation, meditation, and reflection. A large part of the area has been developed into a model farm. Various useful trees have been planted, herb gardens created, fish and poultry are farmed. In a kind of a sacred garden or sacred grove, large trees of particularly good quality will grow. All of this intended to motivate the population and the participants in the various programs to imitate and to promote awareness of the preservation of creation. Varanasi is one of the oldest cities in the world. It is the cultural and religious center of India and is of great importance in the field of education, as well as for the socio-ecological and cultural development of the country. Many pilgrims come from all over the world every year. However, not enough steps have yet been taken to stop the pollution of the cityscape. Mountains of rubbish in the streets are unfortunately still commonplace. The director of Vishwa Jyoti Communications, the media and communication branch of the Indian Missionary Society, has carried out a detailed study of the situation and suggested possible solutions. Examples of these activities are organizing awareness campaigns among school children, greening campaign and waste management, promotion of terrace cultivation with the use of compost, campaign for alternatives to plastic bags, and cleaning of community wells. So now I would like to mention another example from Africa, more precisely from central Tanzania. A message sent to us by Bishop Mfumbusa from Kondoa Diocese in November 2015 read, "During my visit to Germany in 2015, I was often asked about the Pope's encyclical Laudato Si. This made me realize how important ecology is for the people in my home country, Tanzania, and especially in my diocese of Kondoa. Here we have drought and erosion. Laudato Si could help us raise awareness about the care of creation. He then developed a program and asked us, Missio Munich, for support. We were happy to support his plan. Kondoa is not only one of the poorest areas, but also struggling with very difficult climatic conditions. The environmental issues that affect all of Tanzania are coming to a dramatic head in this very dry area. The forest stands and the bee colonies are decreasing more and more. The land also does not provide enough food to keep herds of cattle. The local population was involved in the planning of the project from the beginning. Initially, knowledge was imparted, for example, about sustainable agricultural measures, stopping the loss of flora and fauna, the culture of reforestation. Afterwards, the focus was on active environmental protection. And by planting trees, the first areas have been revitalized, the water supply is slowly regenerating, and horticulture is possible for the first time. People have been shown how economically profitable measures can be implemented in an environmental friendly way. In this case, the integrity of creation and food security go hand in hand. An innovative project came about in a short time. A great impact is achieved through a manageable financial investment. I could go on for hours about ecology programs in the Philippines, reforestation programs in Kenya, agricultural projects in Papua New Guinea, solar-powered well pumps in Benin, photovoltaic systems in Ethiopia, and many more. But there are also impressive experiences on the ground. A bishop from an area south of Kolkata has created a wonderful, very spacious, rich garden on the ground of the bishop's house, to which biology students come and are impressed. One requirement he has given is that not a single tree on any church property should be cut down without good reason. And if it is necessary to do so, 3 other must be planted somewhere instead. I told this to other partners at every opportunity during my project journeys, and maybe one or the other will follow suit. As a long-time staff member of Missio Munich, I am happy that I can do this work and contribute to a better future and the care of our common home. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing with us your valuable insights on Missio's work in the domain of the environment. I now invite our next speaker, Mr. Kamal Murari. Mr. Murari is an assistant professor and chairperson at the TIS Center for Climate Change and Sustainability Studies in Mumbai.
Very good evening from India. I thank you, Harmony Foundation, for providing me an opportunity to speak on issue related to climate change. And the topic which I'm going to discuss today is linking climate change with developmental concerns and focusing more on how we can draw lessons from current literature and what should be done and what should not be done in the context of climate change when we're trying to link climate with developmental issues. I'll start with my slide with first graph which I've drawn using NASA GIS temperature data, although the data is little old, but it gives you an idea where are we at the moment. So if we take 2 baselines, 1951 to 1988, which is shown by GIS TEM data, and there's another GCAC data, both the data link are given here. If we take the baseline of GCAC, which is 1981 and 2020, and look at these 2 green and blue curve, and especially focus on the time 2020, 2002 to 20, what we'll find that the global temperature has risen about 0.8 degree. And a particular year, it has crossed 1 degree. And we talk about 1.5 as per Paris Agreement. And we are right now in I think we can say in the era of 1 degree plus warming, and we have very little scope left in crossing 1.5 degree rise actually. So this is really a concern, and beyond 1.5, 2 degree, beyond 2 degree rise, we will see very serious implication of climate on our habitat. Interestingly, if you look at the warming and what is the direct impact of warming, one can easily see, though I have, as I said, I have bit old data, but you look at the recent 2000 to 2020 period, especially which I'm showing in the figure on the right side, most of the years, which are the warmest year, were actually the recent year. Actually. So this is clearly known that, clearly understood that global temperature, mean temperature rising, and every new year is warmest than or warmer than the previous record years actually. And then we have situation like heat wave, and we have a situation like drought, uneven monsoon, uneven rainfall, long dry periods, and all these will cause casualties in form of extreme event. And I like this graph, this paper, which says a decade of climate extreme, which is the decade means 2000 onwards, which was published in the year 2012. What it says that a large number of recent extreme events are triggered, which is basically due to global warming. And this is unprecedented. Means whatever the extreme that we have seen and observed, which are unprecedented in the past, means these are record-breaking. No, never such kind of event has happened in the past actually. So that is really a concern, and this will take the extreme and will have impact on extreme. So we were actually looking at, and we looked at the extreme, how extreme event can make impact, and we did study for agriculture, especially the kind of pattern of crops in northern Karnataka, and which is basically a data-intensive study using farm level data from Department of Economic and Statistics, local level temperature data, and looking at how these are related. Sorry. So what we can find if we look at the three important variables like rainfall, growing degree days, which is how temperature is adding during a crop season for different crops and crop conditions, and extreme degree days when the additional of temperature is actually beyond critical temperature of a crop. What we found that even the data, which is typically the collected data from farm label and temperature, if you look at, it suggests that extreme temperature is making a negative impact, and there are many extreme episodes which has happened over a period of time, and then it will really impact paddy, jowar, ragi. In fact, tur is one which we thought that possibly because critical temperature high may not, it may not have impact, but we found the severe, significant impact. And our results are statistically not only significant, but robust in terms of looking at whether it is high, it is applicable and correct for extreme tail of temperature distribution or not. So this is the first result. And during the time when we have been writing this paper and looking at result, we found a publication by Tama Carlton from University of California, which says, and which was published in a leading journal of the world, PNAS, Proceeding of National Academy of Science, which says that extreme temperature has, and she has also done the database analysis using data, temperature data, various crop data, and says that this is what I am going to use her wording from the abstract. I estimate that warming temperature trend over the last 3 decades have already been responsible for 59,000 deaths throughout India. We were really shocked with this paper and the way the paper was presented. The reason is we found that there is a chance that extreme event might have impact crop yield, but it is unlikely it will actually do a complete loss to farmers. And even a suicide, when we talk about farmer suicides, these are not only the climate, not only, maybe climate can be an additional impact, but there are other existing conditions that causes this. So we thought that it is, I think somewhere the conclusion that paper is drawing will have a serious policy implications, the way policy, especially in the context of agriculture, the policy could be derived. And so that I actually, along with the co-authors, we looked at the paper in great detail and look at what are the key issues and points. And we found a lot of factual errors in terms of methodology, in terms of presentation and analysis of the paper actually. So I think this is what I am going to tell you, where I'm saying that climate change is real, the impact of climate change on agriculture is a serious issue. There are many findings, not only us we did, but there are some sort of confusion in this. And when the paper appears in such kind of forum like PNAs, it directly, the conclusions are directly taken by policymakers. And that's why we have written a rebuttal to the same journal, and journal has accepted our rebuttal with our concerns. This is what I would like to leave in the interest of time, but farmer suicides are the real issue. It's going up, down. What is the credibility of data that what Tama is, Carleton is taking is also a real issue in this context. Again, I would like to say that when we relate developmental issues and climate change, we should actually think about the developmental concern, more particularly for developing countries, is the real issue and the first issue, the prime issue. Climate change is additionality, and I take the example of this paper where so farmer suicide, which are largely due to the developmental issues or other agrarian issues, economical issues, those are the prime issues in the context. It's a bit harder to relate and attribute to climate change actually. What if you look at the suicide, farmer suicide literature in India, so one of the key findings, so some of the key findings that paper missed to address was squeezing of income due to increase in cost of cultivation, higher cash need for the household requirements. Actually, this is also very common. Poor productivity yield gap is a serious issue in the context. Market fluctuations are another issue. And indebtedness is also, that trap situation is also there. So again, I'm saying that climate change cannot be attributed. However, it might be a factor, but cannot be related directly, and it cannot be said like that farmer suicide is due to increasing temperature. I just want to focus on one of the study that we did. We took the primary labor data, and it's a pool data of I think 9 villages. If we divide villages and if we take a pool data in terms of decile, which are the 10 portion, each 10 portion actually, based on their income. What we see that first three decile, if you actually look at, the income which is from the farm activity is very low, and that's true even for individual villages also. So these are real concern. Agrarian issues are the real concern, and so be the developmental issues which are the real concerns. They should be addressed first if we really want to prepare ourselves to climate change.
Thank you, Mr. Murari. I now invite our next youth for the day, Miss Ridhima Pandey. Ridhima is a young environmental activist from Uttarakhand who advocates for action against climate change. She's been a TEDx speaker and in BBC's 100 Most Empowering and Influencing Women's List 2020 and is also a member of the Youth Advisory Council for COP26.
Hello everyone, my name is Sridhama Pandey. I'm 14 years old and I'm a climate activist based in Uttarakhand, India. I started my activism by filing a petition against the government of India in 2017 due to their inaction to tackle the climate crisis. And since then, I've been working in terms of creating awareness amongst the youth about climate change, about child rights, and why is it important for them to take action. I'm also working to protect the child rights, and I'm also working towards biodiversity conservation. We all have learned about the importance of trees, forests, and biodiversity in our life, but all that knowledge seems to be limited just to our books and exams, and we don't tend to carry it forward. And there are very few people, those who are really thinking about the environment and are taking actions in terms to protect the biodiversity and to protect the nature because of which we all are sustaining and living on this planet today. We children are the one most impacted because of this crisis today, and we are going to be the one most impacted in the future as well. We are going to be the one bearing the consequences of the bad deeds of our older generation. All the decisions, all the actions that they're doing today is going to shape our future, and they're destroying it just for their profit. We are the one most vulnerable of this crisis, yet not the one mainly responsible for this crisis. And that is why it is important for the youths as well to take action. Why should we be the one to suffer someone else's bad deeds? This isn't just fair, and that's the reason why we all should take action. We all should take action because we all live on this planet Earth, and this is our common home. And as it's been said earlier, we don't have a planet B. Environment and nature is one of the important aspects of our ecosystem, and it is not there for us to exploit it. We are losing the ecological balance because of this mindset that nature is there for us to exploit, or is it that nature is a resource, but in the reality it is one of the important aspects because of which we humans are sustaining on this planet. And what I have seen is that there are very less people, those who are taking action or those who are trying their best to conserve or to protect our biodiversity and our natural heritage, but there are a lot of people, those who are exploiting. So there are very few people, those who are protecting or conserving in comparison to the people, those who are exploiting. So are the people, those who are trying to conserve, the only one living on this planet, or are they going to be the one only living on this planet in the coming years? Think about this and start taking action now.
Thank you, Ridhima. I now invite our next speaker for the day, Dr. Ajay Oja. Dr. Oja is the managing partner of Technogreen Environmental Solutions, a leading consulting and technology transformation firm based out of Pune that successfully completed more than 2,500 projects in consulting and implemented 200 plus projects in wastewater, air, and solid waste management.
A very warm and heartfelt thank you for giving me this opportunity to be with you all and share my thought process and my experience with addressing the climate change and environmental sustainability. I'm really glad. I'm really thankful to Harmony Foundation for giving me this opportunity. Also, very heartfelt welcome to my fellow speakers, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. At the same time, I want to really welcome all my friends who are listening to me and have gathered and taking out time to be able to connect with me in order to understand where we are heading towards in terms of climate change and where environmental sustainability actually comes into picture. Let me put forth a very interesting concept of PER of environment. PER means P stands for all kinds of problems. They all start with P, most of them. Environment actually is sandwiched between the PER, and R actually stands for remedies. Now P, we can say population is one of the issues, pollution is one of the issues, politicians are one of the issues, and of course we have plastic as an issue. So you start naming them and you would come to know that all the problems start with P. Whereas remedies, you might be knowing about 3Rs principle, which people have been implementing. Now it has reached to 7R, but I have a very simple 5R principle, which I always try to communicate with all my listeners and participants in such forums. So 5R means, first of all, you start with reduce, or you start with refuse. So if you are unable to refuse something, say no to plastic, say no to pollution. If you are unable to do that, then reduce. If you are unable to reduce, then you start reusing. If you are unable to reuse, then recycle. And if you are unable to do any of these R's, then actually think about rethinking the entire strategy. So with that note, let me simplify what this climate change is all about. So these days you might all be looking at various phenomena that is happening across the globe. For example, the heat waves, the cyclones. We used to never hear about so many cyclones taking place in a year, and round the year, like December, it has been raining in India, it has been snowing somewhere, and we talk about people dying because of extreme cold weathers, people dying of extreme heat waves, storms. These all phenomena actually relate to a chaos theory, and climate change is exactly something like that, a chaos theory. Nobody knows. There are so many events happening everywhere across the globe, but nobody knows exactly what is the pattern and why this is happening, and people have started correlating it with climate change. So what happens is, the moment we have been creating since the industrialization period, so since the urbanization has taken over, this entire phenomena of increase in greenhouse gases actually results in absorption of these IR rays, which is reflected back from the earth. So for example, carbon dioxide, or we have water vapors, also absorbs to some extent, nitrogen oxides, volatile organic carbon, methane. So these are the gases which actually keep on absorbing IR rays, which are reflected back from the earth. Now, since these rays cannot go outside the atmosphere, since the pollution is actually within the atmospheric zone, what happens is, this absorbed rays actually creates the heat, and because of this heat, the temperature is rising. And the moment the temperature rises, there are phenomena and impacts of this rising temperature. Now what has happened is, over a period of time, this temperature rise has been gradual and slow, which is also reflected by the natural phenomena. Like we have the ice age. So during the mid period of the ice age, actually the sun's reflection is the maximum, and that is what is naturally happening. But the pace at which the pace at which this temperature is rising on the Earth's atmosphere is so fast that we have had the highest number of years which are showing maximum temperatures, maximum cyclones in the last 20 years. Now imagine the speed at which this rapid changes are happening on the earth. The nature itself is unable to manage it. Now imagine if our nature itself is unable to manage it, how are we human beings are going to manage it? So the recent studies have actually shown that the pace at which this temperature is rising probably is going to cross 2 degrees Celsius by 2050. Now imagine, 2 degrees actually nothing, you might be thinking that, even the diurnal changes, like, the morning temperatures and the night temperatures in many regions are actually changing from almost about 10 degrees to 20 degrees. So what happens with this 2-degree temperature change? But please imagine, it is not local change that is happening. 2 degrees change is actually the change in the entire temperature of the globe. Now, can you imagine the impact of it? I can, and I would like to share with you. So the impact that I'm talking about is just 2-degree change in temperature can actually, or rather 1-degree change in global temperature can actually result into a havoc. So imagine 4 degrees change in temperature can increase 1 meter of sea level. 1 meter of sea level, what does that mean? 1 meter rise in sea level is all the islands of the world, mostly, are all gone underwater. Now, similarly, if you imagine what would happen locally and how this problem, which is very global, can become very local. Now, imagine you are staying in an island area like, let's say Mumbai is a classic example. Now, what would happen if there is a 1 meter rise in the sea level? The entire Mumbai island city is going to drown underwater, and the population of Mumbai is approximately 1 crore. What would happen to the people? The people will rush to the local areas, the neighboring areas. And imagine that if you are located in neighboring area, all these people are going to rush there. And what would happen to the infrastructure? What would happen to the resources? They're all going to be in trouble. So the problem which was global is actually extremely local, and that is why we all have gathered here and we keep on exchanging information. The latest IPCC report that has been published, that is called as Assessment Report AR6, it talks about 4 different scenarios where, if we are going to keep the business as usual, we probably are going to reach up to an extent of 4 degrees. And if we are good enough and we achieve sustainability and we talk about environmental sustainability, we actually put in a lot of efforts to keep our temperatures down, it probably can be maintained at less than 1.5 degree, and that is what we have to achieve. So, I hope that that you all can contribute very, very small efforts, but together we can make a lot of difference. So the way we have been talking about in terms of, or I have been advocating about in terms of climate change, it's the contribution of the individual. See, no governments, no policies can actually be successful unless and until the people who have to implement and participate in it are actually moving towards sustainability.
Thank you, Dr. Ojha. I now invite our next speaker, the erudite Shri Atul Bagai. Shri Atul Bagai is the India Country Head for United Nations Environment Programme's India Office.
It is indeed my pleasure, and I'm very thankful to Mathai Sahab for inviting UNEP to address the student community across nations at the International Conference on Addressing Climate Change and the Importance of Environmental Sustainability. I certainly would like to thank the Harmony Foundation and those present here today for giving me a chance to address this very, very important issue, which impacts each and every one of us, each and everyone on this earth. Climate change is inextricably linked to the issue of environmental sustainability. So first, we need to understand how is it that sustainability has become such a buzzword today. Sustainability certainly is the pathway to the goal of sustainable development, which is, of course, the overarching paradigm of the United Nations. Classically, it is conceptualized as the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their own needs. And this is an important aspect which we all need to be looking at and be aware of. Sustainability is a paradigm for thinking about the future in which all the 4 dimensions of sustainability are balanced in the pursuit of an improved quality of life. And this is what we are all endeavoring to for the past so many decades and years. For example, A prosperous society relies on a healthy environment to provide food and resources, safe drinking water, and clean air for its citizens, which now are being, at the global level, being termed as basic human rights. This is where it gets tricky. By 2050, the world's population is expected to reach a whopping 10 billion. And with more people comes more demand for food, for fashion, travel, housing, and related aspirations. While we ponder at how we would provide for these, it gets further complicated when we think of some of the words observed trends such as globalization. So today we stand at the crossroads. The pandemic has made us all reflect on all our systems, health, society, economy, education, and in fact, life itself. COVID-19, a zoonotic disease transmitted from animals to humans, is a direct warning that nature can make it no more. Since 1990, 420 million hectares of forest, equal to 3 times the size of South Africa, have been lost. 1 million species face extinction. Illegal wildlife trade is the 4th largest crime in the world today. In the words of a very famous American environmentalist, Aldo Leopold, who said, quote, "We abuse land because we regard it as a community belonging to us, as a commodity belonging to us. But when we see land as a community to which we belong, we may begin to use it with love and respect." And this has been the issue over the last so many decades, that we have really waged a war with land, with nature, with our surroundings, with our ecosystems, with our environment. And we see our planet is changing before our very eyes. From the ocean depths to mountaintops, from melting glaciers to relentless extreme weather events, ecosystems and communities around the globe are being devastated. As per the WMO statistics, and in just this year, we have heard of heat waves in Canada, in British Columbia, and US, where the temperatures went over 50 degrees Celsius. Could you ever think of this scenario? Mediterranean countries are experiencing record high temperatures, wildfires, heavy rainfall in China, floods in Europe, drought in South America, and heavy rainfall landslides in the Himalayas, flooding in India, and the lowest summer sea ice in Arctic. Even within our own country in India, we have seen so many of these natural disasters and vagaries of weather and environment over the last couple of years. So the science is very clear. There is no doubt that climate change is for real. It is man-made and due to increasing global emissions attributed to increased use of fossil fuels. In 2015, countries of the world came together under the Paris Agreement to commit to reduce emissions and limit the rising average global temperature to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Beyond an increase of 2 degrees, and science has evidence, we would initiate a process where we would no longer be in control. Even human survival may be at stake. You all must have heard last November, during the meeting held at Glasgow, it was clear that countries have a long way yet to meet up their commitments to reduce their emissions. Even if all the NDCs which have been given to the UN Secretariat and each country fulfills all those NDCs, we would just be touching the tip of the iceberg in the kind of action that is really required. Use of fossil fuel is not only still rampant, but we are all faced with the prospect of reaching 1.5 degree rise in global temperature in just about 2 decades. In fact, the UN Secretary General has declared code red for humanity. And this is really, this is our last opportunity to take action and to do concrete activities and actions to address the 1.5 degree target which we have set for ourselves. I think challenge like this also brings with it opportunities. 3.5 billion people today are youth under 30 years of age. And I'm talking to the youth on this planet. Young people really think out of box, and we've seen this in the way the next gen has really thought out of box and brought in innovations and ideas to address various problems we are facing today. Actually, you all have the capacity to think critically, innovate, create, and communicate. You really are the change makers when empowered with the knowledge of your rights and equipped with leadership skills. You can drive change in your communities and in your countries. Remember, all of you, that climate change is also a lifestyle issue. It is connected to the way we live, travel, eat, generate waste, and seek our entertainment. Young people can set new trends and lead the society in setting a fashion for leading a low carbon lifestyle. And that should be, a low carbon lifestyle should be the new fashion on this earth. At UNEP, we certainly believe in the power of youth and work with partners for engaging young and inspired next generation of leaders who are environmentally conscious and committed. We, in fact, are always on the lookout for youth who have big, bold ideas for the environment, for humanity, and for a greener future. Under our annual Young Champions of the Earth Awards constituted by UNEP, which aims to nurture the next generation of environmental leaders, we have truly seen some brilliant work from young people. And we hope you may get inspired to aspire for that Young Champion of the Earth Award by thinking out of box, by bringing in innovations. Climate action is now driven more and more by young people, and there is no doubt about it. They are mobilizing communities and young people and collaborating for making all decision makers accountable for their actions. So I would summarize that you are one of the most valuable contributors for climate action. I would like to wish you all the very best for your conference and end with a quote from our UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who says, "My generation has largely failed until now to preserve both justice in the world and to preserve the planet. It is your generation that must make us be accountable to make sure that we don't betray the future of humankind." Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sri Bagai. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of this conference. On behalf of the Harmony Foundation, I thank the panel of our prolific speakers for their time and their rich insights on the environment. As an old proverb goes, we do not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children. I hope this webinar drives home the fact that truly it is our collective duty to heal our environment the best we can, not for ourselves, but for the generations that follow. While we may be separated by caste, creed, religion, gender, the earth is all we have in common. So stay safe and safeguard your planet. Thank you.